Today we have Elisa Magana here to talk to us about her experiences of grief and loss. I looked today, I was like, oh, I should provide like an introduction to Elisa. And then I realized that you're providing an introduction about yourself, very much so. So I was separately just kind of thinking about my introduction to you and like how I was introduced to Elisa. So I kind of wrote down some thoughts about that.
Oh, this is fun.
I know. So I met Elisa first when it was my second professional job, just out of grad school or after grad school. I was hired as a psychotherapist. Elisa actually hired me, I think, at Portneuf Primary Care. Elisa was the clinic manager there. And so she came over during the hospital orientation and met me for lunch, I think just as like providing a warm welcome to the clinic. And while we were eating, she asked me about my life. And I like remember just having this like, just noting this genuine care that she provided and like asking and like really, was actually curious, not just making random conversation or whatnot. And so she started to talk to me about some like really amazing stories about graduating high school early and moving to Hawaii and playing the violin on the streets and living as a homeless musician for a period of time. And just off the cuff, I'm like, oh, that would just be a great story for your memoir someday, which I don't think you really said anything to. But it was like several months later, Elisa's in my office, and I learned that like she had already written this memoir and like several others, and now it's written more than I can count on two hands, and probably thought that I was like kind of some weird stalker that had been looking her up on Google before we had lunch together or something. But really, it was just something I think I would say every once in a while, and now I don't say that anymore. Because sometimes people actually do write the memoir, which is pretty cool. So it was around this time too, it became exceedingly clear that Elisa and I had been junior high buddies in another lifetime. And that laughter is how we both cope with life, and that finally somebody gets my jokes and will actually laugh at them, which is cool. So over time, I learned more of Elisa's story, and by the time I realized what a total badass she is, it was too late. We were already friends, so I couldn't be intimidated by her sorcery. So even just today, as I was like looking up some things, I learned more things about you, which is kind of funny. I learned that Elisa has her own Wikipedia page and that she has a blog that's been viewed over 1 million times, like super wild.
Because I use the word zombie in a bunch of blog posts, and then people search.
It flags it.
I'm like SEO man.
Good to know. We start writing about zombies.
That's all it takes. Zombie.
So I have so much admiration for Elisa's willingness to be vulnerable and open about her experiences today, but just like always, I feel like it's people tend to like hide themselves a lot. And I think it's really cool to be able to share yourself and your story. She's a refreshing, beautiful demonstration of the art of living, and it's an honor to share time with her today. And I feel like I'm going to learn more things that I didn't know too. Like, it just keep learning more things. I should Google you more often. So thanks for being here today. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. You guys, Jenna is absolutely amazing. I still remember when I interviewed her, it was like, we need her. All of our patients need her. So I'm just really grateful for you and your friendship. So basically why I'm here, I don't know if Jenna has told you guys anything at all, but I have stage 4 cancer. And a couple of years ago, doctors told me that I have 2 more years to live. And so we're actually coming up on that. The 2-year mark would have actually been when I first found out how bad everything was. It was actually Halloween of 2020. I know you're going to be helping patients, right, who are dealing with grief and loss, and just kind of what they might be going through and different things that have helped me. So I really don't know the clinical side of how you would help people, but I just know what has really helped me. I had to do radiation on my brain tumor that was cancerous. The other one was not cancerous. And so just to kind of give you guys an idea of what patients might be going through, this is what they had to bolt my head to the table with. They had said that there was a guy who went in there before me And he had freaked out so bad, he actually ripped the mask in half, just so scared. And so I honestly didn't think that I would have the fortitude to really get through this. And they're telling me, you know, if you don't get this radiation done, you are going to die. Because once it goes to your brain, if they can't stop it from there, I mean, you are completely done. They were saying that it would be very fast. I mean, it wouldn't just be 2 years or, you know, a year or whatever. It would be so fast. And so the first thing for the coping skills that I thought was just amazing, they actually let my husband come into the room, and he held my hand as they put this back on me. They actually had to take it off because I freaked out so bad. But they put this back on me, and just to also give you guys an idea, they had to strap my arms to the table. They just totally strap you in because they don't want you to take this off. But my husband had me close my eyes, and he had me imagine that I was a violin. And so I'm a violinist. And for me, this was a huge deal because I started imagining that, you know, a master violin maker was there fixing me up. And so I basically just imagined that God was fixing me. And my husband kind of led me through this, and you know, everybody was kind of amazed, saying, how did he even think of that? And he just said that it just came to him that that would be the one thing that would get me to hold still. And honestly, you guys, as I was on that table, just imagining God fixing me up and basically healing me, I was able to calm down. And I can't remember for sure how long that session was, but I think it was right around 45 minutes or an hour that I had to stay in this. And that just seems like an excruciating long amount of time when you know you can't move. It's kind of strange when, you know, if you're just sleeping, you're just laying there, it doesn't seem like it's that big of a deal, but when you are bolted down, it just becomes really, really hard to stay there. So the other thing that I was thinking about through all of this was how hard it's been, not just for me, but for my family. So I have 4 kids, and I also have a little boy who passed away. But for my 4 kids who are still living, they have had a really terrible time with this. And my youngest, she was 10 when I was hospitalized, and I was in the hospital for almost a whole month, and it was the height of COVID. And so I couldn't have kids come and visit me, and then the adults could. It was just for an hour or 2 a day, and that was it. So really, you know, the doctors came in and said, we give you 2 years to live, and now you can't really see anybody. And so I was going through that. But when I finally got home, my kids just wanted to spend every single second with me. All of a sudden, it was even my teenagers. It was like, let's forget about all of this teenage drama. And we wanted to be a family, be together constantly. And just, it was a reset that I think it's a really terrible way to have that reset, but I think it's something that all of us needed, especially me. And so I actually just had a book that was published about this whole experience. And I wanted to just read this small part of it to you guys, because I think it just really kind of shows what my youngest daughter was going through. So Indy asked, "Are you dying? You missed story time tonight. You never miss it. You must be so sick. I'm just scared, Mama. I can't even go to sleep without you reading to me. How am I supposed to live without you?" I hugged her for the longest time. Being in pain, I can handle, but seeing my 10-year-old cry, it was a pain so terrible I could barely handle it. So that was just another moment for me when, you know, it's so hard going through this, and then you start thinking about death, which everybody faces, but then what you're leaving behind. And it's so hard to keep fighting through all of this, all of the surgeries, through the treatments, through the radiation. You know, you just get so terribly sick, and it's really hard to keep fighting through that. And part of that for me was finding my reason. And you can sit there and think, okay, what's my purpose with life? What is the point of life? And what is my purpose specifically? And I realized really this was one of those moments for me, this whole story time thing, that my purpose is making a difference for the people I love the most. And just if you can find your reason, or when you're helping other people, if you can help them find their reason, it suddenly gives you this strength inside of yourself that you never knew you had, because you're not just fighting for yourself, you're fighting for these other people. And so the other thing that I really realized through this is to appreciate what you have. I mean, obviously, when somebody tells you you're going to die, you start seeing how good things were, or how good the past was. I mean, I so took for granted my health. I love hiking. I love hiking up Slate Mountain Trail. And there were so many times where before I got sick, I was working just a crazy amount of hours. I was working 12 to 14-hour days, 6 days a week. I was running the newspaper in Blackfoot, Idaho. And I was exhausted. But times when I should have been hanging out with my family or spending time with my husband or my kids, I was just working. And then thinking now, I have tried so hard. I can walk a quarter of a mile and that's it. And I just get so exhausted. I can't go farther than that right now. But I wish I would have really appreciated what I had then. But in that same token, I think even how sick I can get now, I can feel now after treatments, I know that if things keep progressing like they have been, it will just get worse. And I need to be appreciative for what I have right now, today. I mean, the fact that I could even come in here to meet all of you today, to even get into the building, is a huge deal. Just to feel that gratitude for that. I've had some really odd things happen throughout this journey too, because I've made friends with people who have, also have cancer. And I've seen a lot of people get better and a lot of people who have passed away. But I think the strangest thing for me is people who weren't sick, who I've been friends with, and then I've known them and they have died. There is this really sweet lady who she was constantly telling me things I needed to eat and what I needed to do different. And she mailed me this big book in the mail just saying, you have to eat all these carrots and all these things. And I thought she would message me every week and just kind of check up on me. And I thought, I haven't heard from her in a couple weeks. I wonder how she's doing. And she responded and said, I'm not doing really, Lisa. I have cancer. And I said, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry you're going through this too. I'll be praying for you. And you guys, I didn't hear from her for a couple more weeks and she died. She died. She got stomach cancer and she'd had it for a little while and she died. And it was just this hard reset for me again of, she had been praying for me and worried for me. And then she ended up passing away. I just think none of us know how long we have. And if we can't appreciate the moments, the small, the big moments, what is the point, really? If we can't be there for the people we love and to really accomplish what we want. I mean, it's amazing that you guys are going to school because I know it's hard. But the thing is, the time passes anyways. And soon all your work will have paid off. But if you're not out there trying to do these things, you don't have really anything to show for it. And you don't want someday to discover that you have some health condition, I mean, God forbid, like what I've gone through, and then to look back and think, hey, I wanted to get that degree. I wanted to do this, I wanted to do that, and I didn't, And so I think just finding the gratitude and going after really what you want to do. And so I started really trying to find the good, because I met a lot of cancer patients a lot of people who find the good, but then there are a lot of people who are struggling to find it. And they can start to get really bitter and really angry about things. And so I would go to Portneuf once a week to get my blood drawn for a little while. I had sepsis and I had liver failure, and it's like one grand adventure after another. But I remember one of the phlebotomists there had said, you're so nice. And, a lot of the cancer patients that we see here every day, they can get really grumpy because they're going through so much. She said, how are you doing that? How are you and some of the other cancer patients who seem so happy, how are you doing this? And I just told her, It's a choice to find the good. It's almost like a game where you see that something terrible is happening. I mean, so when I had liver failure, it was my son's birthday was the next day, and we were so excited. We were going to paint together, and he's having this party, and so anyways, I got hospitalized in Utah, and I didn't get to be there for his birthday. And I remember just crying and crying, and we did this little FaceTime call, and but just knowing I wouldn't be there. And so when I got back home, it was a chance to find the good and to do something good so that we could make an amazing memory. And so what we did was he's always wanted to go on a fishing trip with me. And so weekend I was feeling good enough. We went to Lava Hot Springs, and we went up that little road. I think it's called it's Olison Road or whatever it is, but we went up there and we went fishing, and I just remember the look of joy on his face, and thinking, I wouldn't have done that with him if I hadn't been hospitalized. We wouldn't have gone on this trip. And I stayed out there for hours with him. I was so sick. I mean, I remember throwing up in the bushes. It's like, he didn't know it, like hiding all of this. But then was fishing with him, and we hadn't caught anything. We were just about to leave, and all of a sudden I had a tug on my line. And so I finally said, Trey, I'm really sick. I need to go back to the car. Can you reel both of our lines in and up for me? And he, sure, Mom, I'll do that. And then I could just start crying again, you guys. What a mess. But how excited he was that he got this fish, and just seeing this happiness. And we went back, we got a little hotel room. It was a total dive, where you're like, dear God, if I don't die of cancer, I'm going to die from all these bed bugs. But we watched River Monsters, and it was just this incredible thing, just these memories you can make, but just finding the good. It doesn't have to be bad, these hard times. I mean, we're only here for a certain amount of time. It can be so easy to get lost in the mundane, but if you can just look for the good. Another time that I was trying to find the good, Jenna, you're like, why are you going to tell this story? As I tell it, you're probably going to be like, what story? So it was our anniversary, and I was really struggling to walk very far, and we decided to park by this river up in Bingham County. And anyways, I thought, you know what? I can't do a lot, but what I can do is skinny dip. So we're walking, and all of a sudden my husband looks over, and I'm like, naked in water. He's like, oh my gosh. And you guys, the current was fast. It was freezing cold. Like, the movies make it look really fun. It's not fun. Like, and I just remember, like, please get in here with me. And he's like, I'm not getting in there. It is so cold out here. And he finally, after a very long time, helped me get out. And I thought later, the current could have swept me away to a future with a farmer. Like, I could just see my
Sure.
What month is your anniversary in?
It's in September, so
It's a little chilly.
it's better than like January. So now, I mean, we have all of these memories, and I do feel like I made the best of things, where I started to write these posts, and I thought they were kind of boring or depressing or silly even. But then I've always wanted to be published by a publishing company. So my books I've published them, except for an erotic novel that I wrote that doesn't count. And so, so this one finally got published by an actual publishing company, and it's just, this is my book. It's called 2 More Years, but it's just all of the silly stories, kind of embracing life, and just filled with how I started living more than I ever did before my diagnosis after I got cancer, which is kind of a sad commentary on life, but at the same time, I feel like I've put more into these 2 years than a lot of people sometimes put into their lives because they're just so worried about really getting out there and taking a chance and living, you know? And so this was just kind of, it goes along the lines of not disconnecting from life. And so I've just, this is one thing that's really hit me. So I had a counselor from the Huntsman call me, and she said she was really worried because they saw me talking to this man in the melanoma clinic, and he is really depressed. And she said that he used to be really happy and just embracing life, a lot like me. And then they saw him just take this turn. And I think one of the hard things for him is when you go to the Huntsman and you're there a lot, you kind of see people just change as far as, you guys, I know that they save lives, but you kind of feel like you're watching people get sliced and diced. And I hate to say it that way, but there was one lady, she was really worried because the melanoma was around her eye area and the skin was discolored, and she was just embarrassed. And then I saw her later and they had to remove her eye. And I had to go out in the hall and cry because I thought she was having a hard time just about the discoloration of her skin. I couldn't imagine how she was dealing with losing her eye. And so this man, it was kind of a similar story. He had long hair and you could tell where they had to do this surgery. And so he was missing like this big chunk of his hair, but also he had a big divot in his scalp. And I just knew that must have been hard. I mean, I can't imagine. When I lost my hair, I lost it in spots because of the radiation. And that was honestly a lot harder for me than I would have thought. I mean, it sounds completely stupid and superficial, but it was so hard. It's like you're already going through this. And then I looked in the mirror and I'm like, oh my gosh, I look like a vulture. Like I don't want to look like a vulture. But so this guy, you know, I could see why he was more depressed, but the counselor had called and said she was just so worried that after I talked to him that maybe I was going to start to, you know, be sad and different things. But she told me that the suicide rate among cancer patients is a lot higher than people really know. And sometimes, you know, families tell other people that the patient died from cancer or things like this because they don't really want them to know that it was a suicide. And so she had just said she was really worried for me because I am so happy and things, and they didn't want to see this happen with me because I've seen it with people in the past, right? So she was just saying one of the most important things is just to stay connected to life. And I have a couple of times felt like it's kind of hard when you start to feel really sad, and I love going and shopping at Goodwill and getting dresses. And then I noticed, oh, well, why am I going to go shopping? Because, you know, if I'm just going to die anyways, this seems kind of stupid to go buy something, or why am I getting my hair done? Or that was my next point, is to change the focus from fear. But I wanted you guys to think about right now, what would you say that the opposite of fear is? It's really interesting when you start thinking of the opposite of fear, because everybody really has a different answer for this. And I started thinking the opposite of fear for me is peace. So if you look at what you thought of, what the opposite of fear was for you, and then take that and think of the opposite of that. So where mine is peace, the opposite of peace to me is chaos. And I started thinking, oh my gosh, I'm scared of chaos. I am so scared of not having control. And that for me that was what was so hard about this stupid face cage thing, is because then you don't really have control of that. And so once I had this realization, it was kind of a breakthrough for me about what I'm really afraid of, what the opposite of fear is for me, and then what I'm really looking for to feel better about everything I'm going through. It just helped me in a way that I cannot really explain. And I could focus on what will help me feel better through all of this. And so that for me has been really just feeling like I'm in control of the situation. And so something with that has been focusing on little miracles. And you guys remember in Hansel and Gretel where they leave the breadcrumbs and then that's how they're supposed to find their way back through the forest. And so these are kind of my breadcrumbs from God is what I call them, or my God winks. But I was trying to think of a good one because we've had so many bizarre things happen. I mean, so I started going to the synagogue here in Pocatello. And my whole family was like, what are you doing? Because I was raised very Christian. But so now I've been going to the synagogue and I prayed that God would give me a sign that he would be with me in life and in death. And this was just another one of these weird God winks, just something for me to focus on instead of the fear. But the light happened to shine through the stained glass windows exactly when I had prayed this. And it highlighted my program and it said, it was this line about how God would be with us in life and in death. And just these really bizarre things that have happened to just kind of keep me going so that I'm not so afraid anymore. Another one that happened that I still think is amazing. We had just moved to Pocatello and I was really nervous to be moving away from Utah. My little boy had passed away when he was just 2.5 months old in Utah, and I had this statue that looked like him. And anyways, not very long before we moved, the statue fell over and broke and we couldn't bring it with us. And for some reason, it felt like I was leaving my son who had passed away in Utah, you know, his grave's there and everything. And I couldn't even bring the statue here. And so I was just walking up to the house we bought here, just hoping that I would, you know, see something or have some type of sign that we had moved here for a reason and we were supposed to be here. And so this is my book that I wrote about my little boy who died, but this is the statue. And when I was walking up to our house, I looked to the left and this statue is in one of our neighbors' yards. I had never seen this statue anywhere else except the one that I had. And just this peace, just overwhelming that everything is going to be okay, no matter how hard life gets. That, you know, I mean, I don't know if it's okay to say this, but I think God's just looking out for all of us. I'm not religious anymore, but I do just have this overwhelming peace that no matter what happens, God has a plan. For me, he's like a watchmaker, that when the watch runs out, you know it was going to run out at some time. It'd be kind of silly to get mad at the watchmaker just because the watch stopped running. But you know that it's just the watch's time. And so I don't know if any of this has been helpful or not, but I just figured I'd tell you guys some of the stuff I've gone through, and who knows, maybe it'll help you guys or some of the people that you're treating someday. But did you guys have any questions for me?
What did you say the name of your book is?
2 More Years is the one that is about my journey with cancer, and then The Golden Sky is the one about my little boy who passed away.
And you can look to actually pull this up. Here's Elisa's site here with her blog, and all of her books are listed there too.
Post the link to her blog and stuff. I would like to follow.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Send it. It's right here. Can you see it now too? You could take that down.
Yeah.
That's so nice of you guys. It's been good to be able to write about everything.
I know that people appreciate being able to see that. I haven't been on Facebook in forever, and I just recently got back on there, and I'm like, oh, you write stuff all the time. It's cool.
Yeah, it's like free therapy.
Nice way to be able to connect with other people and
Yeah.
get things out there. Terica said, one more question. Are there any specific activities which help your kids process these feelings? I'm trying to learn how to help my son process the loss of an individual he cared about.
So we started writing a little bit together because I realized how much that helped me. And then my youngest has done a lot with clay.
Okay.
And I'm not quite sure why, but she like labored over this little, we had a cat who passed away, and she decided to make this little clay cat. But it was like this huge thing. But then it was kind of cool because it was almost like a gift she was making for a cat who passed away. But it's strange because here she's dealing with this other loss, but I really saw how much she was dealing with everything I've gone through. And it kind of gave us a nice moment to be able to talk about things in a safe way, because she was so busy focusing on the clay. She could kind of talk more about what she's going through and how scared she is that I'm going to die and all these things. But then it wasn't as scary. So that's something that's really helped us. But really the writing aspect has been cool because I've had them write about, different, just so fictitious things. But then it's interesting what kind of comes up from their subconscious. And then I've been able to say, oh, how are you feeling about this? Or do you feel like, are you nervous every time I go to the hospital because that month I got hospitalized for, oh yes, So, but I think it kind of helps them. And it's actually helped them kind of hold on to the little God winks they've seen too.
Sounds amazing. And I think it is instead of going at it directly with them, being able to write or use music or art or whatever can be so helpful.
Yeah.
Terica says, thank you.
Yes.
Well, thanks so much for coming. I really appreciate it.
Thank you guys. That was so fun to be here and get to visit and show you guys my face mask.
Your face mask is kind of scary. I'm not gonna lie.